So welcome all. I welcome you also in the name of my wife, because we do this together. But because of unfortunate circumstances called real socialism, my wife's education was Russian rather than English. So I have the honor of representing us both, because I come from the Netherlands and their English is very close to our language. Forget about the title. It's a long one just to be sound pompous. We like that. It's a European project. So, see. Should work. If not, then this should work. Yeah, but if I click, it doesn't work. Okay. Yep, all set. Thank you very much. So what is it? We're working within the framework of a Horizon funded project, and that is basically innovation and research. And what we do is we go against the current. We now live in a time which is both war and non-war peace. That's what NATO tells us since 2022. That's new for Europe. But until now, we were a continent in peace. So we need to reconfigure where do we stand. And the problem is we didn't so far. So there are two currents sort of reacting or starting to react. One is that we should be more cracking down on everything that's threatening us, so outward looking, more censorship, more moderation, more a lot of things to sort of limit the possibility of us getting endangered or even worse, getting taken over by foreign narratives, foreign operatives, and so on. We chose an opposite direction. We chose to rather go for more democratization and achieving something that I think is very necessary, which is engaging the whole of society in democracy. Because we see in a lot of places that democracy is something alien, it's just a word. If we look at our kids in our classroom, we're also part-time teachers. For our kids, democracy is just another beautiful word without any meaning, which is horrible, to be honest, because it should be different. So what we try to do is we try to democratize and decentralize decision-making processes. Well, that sounded very pompous on paper. We then had the complete fortune that the friends that we worked with, the Polish friends, won the elections. That was good for them, but they also became powerful. That was good for us because we could realize things very easily. So all of a sudden, one of them is now Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the other one is the delegate of the government for disinformation, dealing with disinformation. So we could start with democratization. So now we got, for the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, we got a first council, which is consisting of representatives of 100 academic organizations and NGOs, to sort of think along how to deal with disinformation. And it really is a breakthrough. So we're very proud of that. When there will be a DSC, so under the Digital Services Act, there will be a coordinator for every country. It's everywhere but in Poland, because the president hasn't signed it yet. But when it will be, there'll be a second, what we call Resilience Council. So a council with NGOs and with academics to think along. Well, that's the first step, but there's a major limitation on that. Because basically what you do is getting more experts in, not just governmental experts, but also non-governmental experts. That's not society. I mean, let's not try to mix that up. So what we try to do is we try to get out of the meritocratic and technocratic bias and find ways to get real people involved. But that's a different ballgame. Because so far, we are very weak in responsibility to citizens. That's why populism is so strong. Because people want to be represented, and populism says, we the people, we will represent you, we will make your voice being heard. Of course, that's not the way, but we need to find a better way. And also what we see is citizens are more and more framed as objects of protection. We have a sort of paternalistic strand. When I was doing education for adults, it was always about them. Like it was a different sort of species, like those nice people who are, in need of our protection help. I don't see any of them, it's us. I mean, we could have been in the same situation as those people are. So we see increased paternalism, and also democracy sometimes seems reduced as a way to just redistribute power. We have elections, then you get the power and you have less to say. That's not what democracy should be about, according to us. So what is it? We think it's citizen well-being should be in the center, but that's a nice word. But what does it mean? Well, then we go to basics, human psychology, and we have 4 or 3, it depends on who you ask, your basic human needs. For autonomy, we need to experience autonomy. We need to feel that we are somebody and we have a right to be in our own way and express ourselves. Belonging, it's also nice to be part of a group or groups and feel that you share a presence with others. and achievement, because if nothing works, you're not feeling very happy. So we are taking as a point of start in the thing that's called the system theory, autopoiesis. That's a great Greek word, but basically means we are organisms trying to survive. So wherever it's better, we go there. If it's worse, we think, not for me too much. So it's very interesting because you can create context where it's better to be or worse to be. And if our idea is if we can create a context where it's better to be, people would want to go there rather than where it's worse to be. So that's the underlying thing. Of course, it means that you can also go in the wrong direction because somebody promises you to go there. So you need to find a way to make it more authentic. And again, there's another pompous word, authentic. For us, it means that we all have our personal ways of making sense of reality. We call it personal ontologies. And that's partly based on facts, like what we know from the outside world, and partly from our experiences, how we lived so far. Part of that is non-conscious, because we just find reality as it is from the moment that we get born on, and then we sort of make sense of it. But a part of it is conscious. And what we try to think is that authenticity is when you combine both knowledge about your world and the outside world in a way that corresponds with what you're thinking now. So you're trying to make sense of the world in a multi-level way. And if you do that, then you can go there, hopefully where it's better for you, because you know what would be good for you. Okay, so far, this introduction is general. How do we involve the general public? Well, there was a man called Lewandowski, he still exists, and he says there's two ways of modes of discourse in democracy. It's fact speaking and belief speaking. Fact speaking basically is talking from your guts. Belief speaking is going from facts and going from there. And he presents them as if they are two mutually exclusive elements. But for us, they're not, discourse, but they're not. They're both part of how you look at the world, like I said. So basically, if you take all of that, you take all of that from people in, not just the way that they look at the world from a fact point of view, but also how they experience it. What you get is three things. You get more responsiveness because you react to what people feel, not just what they think they should say or what they should know. It enhances your legitimacy because from that moment on, people feel heard. And that means that like, oh, they're closer to me than I thought. And it improves implementability. Whenever you have a brilliant decision going on, but nobody cares for it because they feel that this is wrong, you have an enormous hindrance to implement it. And if people go along and if they feel that they were part of the decision process, it's easier for them to accept even when it's not exactly what they would want to want. So how do you start this? Well, we started with James Sorowiecki. He wrote a very hyped book called Wisdom of Crowds, but there's a few very interesting pre-requirements to start doing participation. Now get your education, by the way, really. First of all is you must have a little bit of knowledge about the subject. It would be very hard for us to talk about brain surgery without any sort of previous knowledge that makes some sense. So we need to have some idea what a brain and what surgery is. The second thing is you need to have cognitive diversity. It doesn't mean that you need different age groups, you need different genders. It means people need to come from different places with their point of view and with different levels of intelligence, different levels of understanding. So it would be great to have extremely non-intelligent people around because they add something to the mix, which sounds very paradoxical to us because we love to be intellectual. But it's great to talk to people who are just like, no, this is how it is, because then you have to deal with that. Third thing is judgments are to be formed independently. And we'll come to that because that's the hard part. I mean, so far everything is like, oh yeah, or whatever, but this is the real one. And participants draw decentralized and local tastes and knowledge. So they have to be somewhere integrated in a place, not just wandering around businessmen who have no idea what's going on in the world except for their little bubble. You need them as well. But most of them, you want them to have also sort of feeling of what's happening in their real world. So why education? That's about the independent judgment requirement. You need to have simultaneous exposure to the same question. How do you do that? Because, okay, you've got the internet. You can expose everybody to the same question. But then you've got a second one, individual reflection without consultation. If you're on that, you can just consult with everybody, right? You can say, what do you think about it? You don't want that. And you want also delayed exposure to others' perspectives. So not only no consultation, also not getting to know what others think. So you have to be completely autonomous. You can do that in the classroom. In the classroom, you can just show a picture. You can show a picture with a question, ask kids to think about it and give their reply, and only then read it out aloud. That's what we do. But that's why we took education. You can do it across schools. So you can centrally, you can arrange it in this way that a lot of schools do the same question at the same time and send the answers of the kids to the same central server. There's no interaction, there is no consultation, so you get their perspectives. Of course, the question is, will they be answering honestly? We'll come to that. So the core challenge is basically in the classroom that you have an epistemic asymmetry between teachers and students. Teachers know it all, students are stupid, they have to learn. Well, not really. So we go to interdemocracy. And why is it called interdemocracy? Let's first do some hype. We were chosen as a good practice by the European Commission in 2022 in the communication guidelines for teacher educators. We're endorsed by a lot of policymakers, academics, and practitioners, and we're positively reviewed. But what is it? Now let's go first to what is the basic idea? The basic idea is that if you create a space where people feel that they can speak their mind, you start opening up something which is really non-normal. If I sit in the classroom and my kids come in, I feel the difference between an empty classroom or the first kid with a hoodie just with their phone coming in and sitting there. Something is changing, and that something is something very hard to define in our language. But the Japanese have a word for it. It's called ma. And ma is inter. And inter means there is a space between us where we feel both that there is a space. And they use it for martial arts, which is a bit of a aggressive formula to use in the classroom. But basically it's about, you feel that it's not between us, there's not just empty space. There is an opportunity. We could go there and communicate outside of our own personal ontologies. So what do we do in the participation process? Basically, the teacher gives an introduction, very neutral, only evidence-based. Then there's a central question. Then kids give their answers. First, they write down by hand, then they write it down digitally, send it to a central server. AI-assisted clustering takes place, of course, under human supervision. It doesn't interpret, just say, these are the clusters. Then there is a resilience council made up by youth, by young people. They're older normally than the kids that are in the classroom, and their only task is to translate what the kids say into recommendations. The recommendations go back to the classroom. All of the kids who were there in the first round then speak their minds about, is this what you thought that should be or not? Give an evaluation and a reason. Then it goes back to AI, it clusters again. Then it goes back to the Resilience Council, and then they create like definitive recommendation. It goes to institutions. We tried that. The hard part is not kids, the hard part is not youth Resilience Council, the hard part is institutions. They do not react that easily. They need some help, let's say. Then out of Oasis, what do? Well, you want all people, all participants to be involved. So everybody needs to have the same sort of same context where they work in. What does it mean? It means that the whole list of medical requirements that we have for our kids are ignored. Every kid gets the same amount of space, same amount of time. But if they say nothing, it's okay too. If they don't want to, it's okay too. The only thing is there is an opportunity to speak their minds. Of course, what we do is to say, we can't use the word we in your answer. You're an I. So we break up social and other pressures. Hierarchies in the classroom as well, because they do it individually. They always say thank you at the end of every answer. It's on a three-way level. First level is thank you for being able to speak my mind. Second, thank you that you want to listen to me. And the third one is thank you that you will, if you are recorded, and it's the last part, after the moment they write down and it's sent to a server, they leave it out into the classroom. So then they feel that they have to take responsibility for their words. And the thank you then is also to the classroom, like thank you for being here with me. There is no interaction during the formulation phase. Like I said, handwriting, digital, spoken aloud. Randomized speaking order. So kids that are to speak already what they have written are not to be just behind the colleague they're sitting next to, because probably they'll be slightly feeling that they should be more in the direction of what their colleagues have been saying. There are no reactions allowed, not by the teacher, not by any student. So it just hangs in the air, whatever is being said. For teachers, that's hell. We go to that. But what is interesting, for other kids, it's like, okay, I can say nothing. But they start to be more and more interested because they don't have to judge all of a sudden. They don't have to show themselves in the class like, I have a great opinion, right? And the teacher is like only a facilitator of procedure. So why is that a problem for teachers? Normally, teachers are the most clever people in the room. Now they are just facilitating. So their knowledge doesn't mean anything. The only thing they do is make sure nobody reacts, make sure that if something goes wrong, that they try to repair it, but they don't have to add any knowledge to the system, to the process. It's evidence informed normally, And now it's just servicing whatever people want to say. And that's hard because kids can say the strangest things. And we have only one boundary, that is the next one. It is the legal system. As long as legal, you're allowed to say anything in our classroom, which is hard to hear from time to time because it turns out, well, a little group of our kids is sort of ultra right. And they feel very constricted by the normal school system to talk about it. So it looks like they're normal kids having a normal democratic life. No, not really. And now it comes out. And of course, it's not pretty to hear that. It would have been the same for ultra left or ultra religious or whatever you think ultra. But what is good about it is other kids hear it as well. And they think until now that all kids think like that. And now all of a sudden it turns out they're one of three, one of four, one of five in the class, but not all of them. So all of a sudden they feel it's not normal, like statistically normal to think that way. Normally it's naive realism based. So the teacher thinks what I say is true, what you say is subjective in the classroom. That's how teachers work. It's my classroom. I know what I'm saying. You're just, getting there. So whatever you say is biased, to say the least. No, this is just, you want to have the best experience for the most amount of people in the classroom, which means that if it's a negative experience, it weighs 5-10 times harder than a positive experience. So you don't want anybody to feel excluded. You don't want anybody to feel ridiculed. You don't want to feel anybody to feel judged. That's why also the rules are there. Normally they're interventional and benevolent. Like they could even be like, oh yeah, I agree. Oh great. Oh, yeah, tell me more. Nothing like that. Only neutral observations, which means that if something is wrong, and we had in a completely different project, a girl who said, I don't meet up with adults anymore, but she was 11 and it was about men. Your first reaction is to just jump in and do something. But like a good psychologist does, you don't intervene, you just listen, you observe, you think about a way to deal with it, and then you go about it. For teachers, that's hard. They want to help, they want to push along, they want to, help you be better. And they have a mission. They have a guardianship which is mission-based. I'm there for you. I want to have you the best of life you want. No, this is responsibility. That's something else. You be you, which is very hard because the you might not be a you that I like. It might be you that I completely don't like. I mean, we have in our classroom kids with opinions that I really don't share, but I'm happy they can express them better. That's democracy for me, even though I'm still not happy when they speak their minds in a better way. Pilots. We did a pilot, and I'll be very quick about it. There were 14 teachers, 16 primary school classes. There were 4 90-minute sessions. We had 3 random topics. Well, random in a way that it's content agnostic, so you can do it about anything, but it was participation, artificial intelligence, and how to discuss difficult subjects in the classroom. What was interesting? Pilot teacher outcomes. They felt more and more teachers comfortable in the role of facilitator, but less more and more. So it was still more and more, but it went down. So it was like, at the beginning, it was like, yeah, I feel much more comfortable. Now I was like, yeah, I feel more comfortable. Probably at a certain point, I would just feel like, yeah, that's okay. Which is the one thing that you want to achieve. So you think you want to have more and more, like, oh, I feel more comfortable. If they feel more comfortable, it means they could feel more comfortable. And you want them to just feel comfortable. So that's one thing that quantitative. Of course, it's a very small sample size, but it's just to give you an indication. But the second thing is, I think, the most important. Teachers were feeling more at ease. They were feeling unburdened. They were feeling like, I now understand more what's happening in the classroom because I don't have to be the most clever person all the time correcting everything. I can just observe. And all of a sudden, it was a completely different classroom than they thought it was. And it was both disconcerting and very inspiring at the same time. And they feel that they had to develop new competences, soft competences. So that's what happened. But the hardest part was not to intervene. That was hard. They were just sitting there like, I wanted to say something because this is wrong, but they couldn't. So that's what happened so far. And what do we think is, we think it lays the ground for student democratic basic skills, because what we have done, we've taken so many steps ahead and we've lost students in a way, we think. They're not really prepared to talk in the classroom, kids. And the reason is quite simple. There's 2 reasons. One of them is a very sociological reason. Kids have withdrawn to little islands of trust. So they don't talk to everybody as easily as maybe 20 years ago or 10 years ago. They don't want to experiment. Their favorite car is a Volvo. They like safety. So what is interesting is they want things to be like only in a little group, to be open and private. And for the rest, it's just public and I'm neutral and I just go along with the flow. That's one thing. But the other thing, which is very important, is that they feel like it doesn't make sense anyway. They've given up on us. And that's maybe because of COVID, they were pushed around like you stay at home, you be there, you do this, you do that. And they lost faith in us. So What we think is they should learn anew to speak out their minds in a way that really is like what they want to say, not what we want to hear. And also they should learn again to listen, because their attention span for listening to another person is 10 to 15 seconds we measured in the classroom. And then they get either bored or they just get lost. And then they start evaluating like, why should I listen for more? And then they have no reason, and then they just shut down. So either they're silent or stop giggling or whatever. And they need reasons to open up more, and we try to give that to them. So we think if you can do that, you can train skills afterwards. So dialogue, negotiation, everything we already do in schools. But without this, there will be just skills. There won't be skills to use for yourself. So I'll stop here because we have little time. But this is what I wanted to tell you as a very short and quick overview of what we do. And the word inter was there, so yeah.